Welcome everyone to the Hurting Humanity channel. The Pope opened the Vatican holy door, the spiritual portals, launching Christmas rituals on Christmas Eve. I covered this a few weeks ago when the Vatican was announcing that they were going to be opening 5 portals, what they're calling 5 sacred portals, which included the tomb at St. Peter's Basilica, which happens to have a tomb underneath the altar called Lucifer. Now, if you haven't seen in the past, the Vatican, the god of the Vatican, the god that the Vatican worships is Lucifer. For those of you who haven't seen some of the ceremonies in the past where they were chanting out to Lucifer, calling Lucifer God.
Flama Seus, Lucifer matutinus inveniat. Ille inquam Lucifer qui nescito casu.
That is the God that they actually worship. And these 5 sacred portals being opened at the Vatican coincides with this story from Cern. Because within the last week, scientists discovered magic at the Large Hadron Collider. For those of you that don't know what they're trying to do at Cern, they talk about opening up a black hole, creating enough energy to open up a black hole, and then it's explained to us that it's something to do with science that we don't understand, but they need to find out the understanding of the universe. And all this has to do with is opening portals, opening dimensions, bringing over what's behind the veil. So it's not a coincidence that the Pope opened 5 specific portals while CERN discovered magic at the Large Hadron Collider. And I'll get into what they're talking about at CERN momentarily, because the discovery of magic that they're speaking of has to do with quantum computing. And if you start connecting the dots with some of the things I've shown you over the last couple of years with quantum computing, discussing these little chips, describing them as little people, as little demons, you'll start to understand that this stuff with technology, with quantum computing, with the things they call science at CERN, all has to do with demonic entities being summoned forth. Of course, this has to do with energy harvesting. Harvesting energy. Energy is really the core of witchcraft. They energy harvest and then they cast out spells which achieve desired outcomes through rituals and other practices that these witches and Satanists practice and believe. So let's go to the Vatican first. The Pope was seen coming in a wheelchair. He's getting wheeled in. It was very creepy. It was creepily filmed the way that the Vatican had this thing set up. The Pope looks like he's quadrupled in size. I guess he's not eating Z-bugs over there in Vatican City. He's getting plenty of, well, I'm sure plenty of flesh. But if you didn't know, the 5 places, the 5 portals are being opened. This was discovered by many people out there. If you pinpoint them on a map and you cross between which portal is being opened at which time, right? And you go from one to the next, to the next, to the next, it actually makes this symbol. And if you don't know what this symbol looks like or is, this right here is the sigil of Lucifer, which some also call the seal of Satan. I've broken this symbol down before. You can see a lot of Satanists, for example, like Marilyn Manson, who have this symbol tattooed directly on their bodies. Manson has it tattooed right on his hand. And what is Manson known for? Well, Manson's known for worshiping Lucifer, is he not? And speaking of Lucifer, if you recall when I covered the breakdown of these 5 portals, if you go to the website, St. Peter's Basilica info, you'll see the map of the Vatican necropolis, which is where one of the portals was open, and you could go through the areas in the necropolis, and area U is actually called Lucifer. And if you look at the map, it's directly underneath the altar inside of that basilica. And if you recall, the seal inside of that basilica, inside of St. Peter's Basilica, is the coat of arms of the Barberini family, and it contains 3 bees directly on that crest. You could see them directly in the center of the crest. Now, why 3 bees? Well, this is how they operate, right? Bees use hexagons to build honeycombs, okay? Hexagons equal the number 6. And of course, in Revelation chapter 13, verse 18, here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. So while all of this stuff is happening at the Vatican, which people are becoming a little bit more suspicious of as the years go by, that clip from 2014 of them chanting out Lucifer is God, since then, we've seen a lot of different bizarre things with the Vatican, how they align with the LGBT and some of the things with artificial intelligence now that the Vatican is lining up with. The Vatican even recently talking about how they were going to be the voice of any type of extraterrestrial event in the sky. It's going to come through the Vatican. They're going to discern whether it was an act of God or it was extraterrestrial. Of course, this is setting up for Project Bluebeam perfectly and some type of deception to occur in the sky. And then since then, things like this, where they're talking about opening these doors and they're actually calling them portals. People are starting to look around and say, what in the world are they talking about? That sigil of Lucifer lining up directly with the 5 coordinates of the portals being open, and it makes the sigil of Lucifer, the seal of Satan, and of course having that tomb underneath the Vatican. Now, while this stuff is happening, all things portal related, all things with energy harvesting related, we could go back and look at Cern. Again, over the years, how many things have we seen Cern do, which have to do with what we would look at as occult worship, right? We've seen the stuff with Cern and the Mandela effect over the years, right? Where they have a commercial out and they're even holding up a sign saying Mandela effect, where people believe that Cern is doing things to manipulate time. Well, in addition to those things with Cern, we've seen them do mock sacrifice rituals right outside of Cern. And we've also seen Cern put out very bizarre videos where they tell you, well, this is what we're doing at Cern, which I'll show you again in a minute for anyone out there who hasn't seen it, where they're literally showing you that they're summoning entities. But what they tried to do is say that this is science, you're too dumb to understand, so stop asking questions and just take us at our word. We're doing things scientifically and you don't get it. Kind of like they told you to put poison in your body, and anybody out there that questioned it, they called you dumb, they called you stupid. They said, don't listen to those people, listen to us. And of course, who was right and who was wrong about what you should and shouldn't do, because these people aren't really scientists. They're sorcerers, they're magicians, and they use alchemy and science to confuse you into thinking that they're doing things for the betterment of you and betterment of health, and they're not. So this happens at the same exact time. Twin brothers find magic in quarks at Large Hadron Collider. So there's that word magic. You know that word magic that you've been indoctrinated with? You hear, oh, when I met this girl, it was like magic, right? This magic moment. Disney magic, enjoy the Magic Kingdom. Magic is pretty much everywhere, yet people don't believe that magic actually exists. They've been trained to think it doesn't exist, and that's how all of these witches and Satanists have been protected over the years. They convince you that magic's not real while they're actually spell casting on you and using mind control tactics on you to make you think that people like us are insane, even though throughout history, witches have existed. We've heard of witch trials and witch hunts, yet they don't want you to believe that witches actually exist and that magic is real. They want you to think that it's fiction, and that's why they do these things where they put out satanic panic, government propaganda to convince you that it's all crazy. They put things out when people like us are talking about gateways into the occult, things like Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering. They want you to think it's just fun and games, yet they're teaching people how to be practitioners in magic by just doing basic things in magic, right? Thinking it into existence, energy harvesting. These are things that they're doing every single day to people, and they don't even realize it because they're actually under a spell. So these twin brothers find, quote, magic at the Large Hadron Collider. And if you read what it says a brotherly research duo has discovered when the Large Hadron Collider produces top quarks, the heaviest known fundamental particles, it regularly creates a property known as magic. The finding, published in Physics Review D, has implications from the progression of quantum computing, with magic being a measure that describes how difficult a quantum system is for a non-quantum computer to calculate. So that might just sound like all gibberish too. So let me just clarify what it's saying there. Okay? It's talking about magic where it says it regularly creates a property known as magic. So is that just are they just using that word loosely? Or are they just saying, well, it's like magic because, it's magic, right? And you're supposed to just dismiss that. And then when they go into quantum computing, they don't expect you to understand what quantum computing is. And they go on to say, well, quantum computing and the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, quote, the higher the magic, the more we need quantum computers to describe the behavior, explains Professor Martin White from the University School of Physics, Chemistry, and Earth Sciences, which co-led the study with his twin brother, Chris White, a physicist from Queen Mary University of London. Quote, studying the magic properties of quantum systems generates significant insights into development and potential uses of quantum computers. So I expect 10 out of 10 people, when they hear that, to have no idea what they're hearing about. They're like, okay, I have a computer at my home. Okay, is my iPad a computer? Is my phone a computer? Okay, so what is a quantum computer? Well, it's a computer that operates at a significantly different speed than a regular computer. And quantum computing is going to be used, believe it or not, to operate all systems in the future. I believe personally it's one of the reasons they're trying to cool the earth, not because of climate change, because these computers need to run at very, very cold temperatures. And when you hear quantum computing, let me break this down to you. You hear everything at CERN, right? Let me put this in to make it as simple as possible. There are movies and shows and all these things that I guarantee the majority of you have heard of or seen, where they openly talk about things like Hadron Colliders. You just don't know it, right? For example, Stranger Things, the Hadron Collider is the exact machine that they show you that is opening up that window into the upside down, right? CERN is literally opening up a black hole. This black hole will enable them to summon forth demonic entities. They are using energy to do it. So I'm going to play for you CERN, where you can see CERN's rituals being done out in the open. Pay attention to it. Pay attention to what they're saying in regards to the upside down. And then pay close attention to what quantum computing is and connect the dots between CERN and quantum computing and summoning the demon.
Have existed for over 100,000 years. You weren't so different from apes. How long did it take you to discover agriculture? It took you 90,000 years to get from hunter-gatherer to farmer. How long did it take you to become industrialists? Atomic power, computers, the information age. And how long do you think it took us to get from hunting to farming, and farming to industry, and industry to atomic power? We are going to kill your science. It's a proton. One we have turned into a sentient computer. The universe has more dimensions than the 3 we occupy, but we have the technology to unfold them. We summon energies you cannot imagine. Even a tiny proton becomes something very large. A proton has virtually no mass. To the places where your best minds explore reality. Every civilization ends in chaos. There will eventually be a cataclysm from which we cannot recover. Our planet will be ripped in half.
Well, basically, there are parallel universes, infinite variations of it.
Like the Veil of Shadows.
And the tightrope is our dimension, and our dimension has rules. You can move forwards or backwards. The flea can also travel this way.
Upside down.
Exactly.
Is there any way for the acrobat to get to the upside down?
You'd have to create a massive amount of energy, open up some kind of tear in time and space. You create a doorway, like a gate. It might even swallow us up whole.
Now, have you heard of the Garrow Research Facility?
In Long Island, the particle accelerator?
Yeah.
It actually splits the proton of the atom.
Well, you know more than I do.
Well, it's a 14-mile loop that accelerates electrons and protons close to the speed of light.
Local parishes in Ryland are protesting. The particle accelerator will open the gates of hell.
So the scientists, they want us to prove they're not opening the gates of hell.
What's that? Something that was filmed down in the particle accelerator.
Satan, help us open this portal. We deliver this sacrifice to you.
The Vatican is asking you to investigate and write up a report.
It's a prank, right?
Well, I don't know. That's your job.
How did they make that video, Doctor?
We're in a friendly competition with Cern, particle accelerator in Switzerland. They did a similar video making fun of the satanic panic about their opening. So what can we do to convince you we are not Satan worshippers?
I mean, it's just the name that the night ship calls it. B-33. And the proton collider? They broke through something. But there's something there. Something under the concrete. A creature. They dragged that woman into it.
That's where the beams converge.
Oh, and your safeguards.
The beams are accelerated around the loop at 13,000 revolutions per second.
Any concern about an uncontrollable black hole?
It's not going to happen.
I know.
I mean, with artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. You know those stories where there's the guy with the pentagram and the holy water, and he's like, yeah, you sure you can control the demon? Didn't work out. I mean, with artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon.
So I received this message from the heavens. My microwave dish, my SETI dish, finally captures something. We're coming to your planet, a super intelligent alien race. We're coming July 13th, 2030, and boy, you better be ready. AI is just like that. It's going to be exactly the thing that you're thinking about those super intelligent AIs. So the one thing I can tell you is they're not going to be like us. So alien means, different. These things that we're building are not going to be people. They might be really smart, they might be really good at all sorts of different things, but they're not going to be like us. They're going to be aliens. And they're going to be, I'm sorry to say, way smarter than every single person in this room. But these words, demons, doesn't capture the essence of what's happening here. Yes, there are these massively intelligent entities out there, but they're not good, they're not evil. They just don't give a shit about you even in the slightest. The same way that you don't care about an ant is the same way they're not going to care about you. And these things that we're summoning into the world now, they're more like the Lovecraftian great old ones. There are entities that are not necessarily going to be aligned with what we want. And underneath it all is this rising tsunami that, if we're not careful, is going to wipe us all out. I'm going to tell you a little bit about quantum computers and why people care so much about them. And that is that there are an enormous number, mind-bogglingly large number, of parallel realities, as real as this one, that have different consistent histories. So imagine a world where all of the laws of physics as we know them are obeyed, but different decisions were made along the way. Different decisions at the level of tiny microscopic particles, different decisions all the way up to what you chose to eat for lunch and whether you chose to come to the session or not. Quantum mechanics makes a very specific prediction that all of those are as real as the thing that you remember. And this is bizarre because we don't see those other things. But science has reached the point now where we can build machines that exploit those other worlds. And quantum computers are perhaps the most exciting of all of these. Humans use tools to do things. If you give humans a new kind of tool that can do things that you couldn't otherwise do, imagine the possibilities. This is what they look like. There are two of them. From the outside, they look like giant black monoliths. They have a fridge inside them, a refrigerator that cools these chips to almost absolute zero. Hundreds of times colder than interstellar space. Amongst the coldest and most isolated and extreme conditions that humans have ever been able to engineer. So if you have the opportunity to stand next to one of these machines, it is an awe-inspiring thing, at least for me. It feels like an altar to an alien god. They really are impressive machines. The heart of this big box is a tiny chip about the size of your thumbnail. And on this chip resides all of the wonder and magic that makes this thing go. I'm not going to describe in any mathematical detail how it all works, but let me give you an analogy. In quantum mechanics, there's this concept that a thing can exist in two states which are mutually exclusive at the same time. Imagine that there really are parallel universes out there, and now imagine you have two that are exactly identical in every respect, all the way out to the horizon as far as we can see, down to the last little atomic detail of every single thing, with only one difference. And that's the value of a little thing called a qubit on this chip. In a quantum computer, that device can be in this strange situation where these two parallel universes have a nexus, a point in space where they overlap. And when you increase the number of these devices, every time you add one of these qubits, you double the number of these parallel universes that you have access to. Until such time when you get to a chip like this, which is about 500 of these bits, you have something like 2 to the 500th power of these guys living in that chip. It feels like an altar to an alien god of these guys living in that chip.
I mean, with artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. You know those stories where there's the guy with the pentagram and the holy water, and he's like, yeah, you sure you can control the demon? Didn't work out. I mean, with artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon.
Listen. So I'm sure those are all just coincidences, right? When you hear guys who are running things like D-Wave, like Gordy Rose, talking about quantum computing, these rich people who've been given government grants with our tax money so that they can pretty much destroy the human race and bring forth something that nobody would ever agree to being allowed to bring forth. That's why they word this stuff so that you can't understand it. That's why they train you to think, well, spiritual, the Bible talking about the spiritual world, well, that's more like a feeling, that it's not actually real, right? They train you to think, well, ghosts could be real. Grandma could be, right around the corner in your house, sitting there listening to you, right? How many times do we hear these shows where they're like, I know mom's here with me right now on Christmas, looking over me or smiling, right? So people believe in that. They believe, well, ghosts are real, right? And they've been trained to think that. Yet demons and demonic entities aren't. And the Bible openly, specifically talks about not just demons being real, Jesus casting out demons out of people's bodies, but the spiritual war that we are in. And witches obviously have existed for a long period of time. And Satanists, because magic is real. If magic wasn't real, all these people we look at who are Satanists, who are witches, right? We see them in Hollywood. Let's just use examples of Katy Perry's and Lady Gaga's, right? Or these people like Lana Del Rey. They openly admit to being witches. So what do you think that means? Do you think that what they're doing doesn't actually manifest these things, these spells that they do? If it didn't work, why would they continue doing it? Why would people have gone after these witches in different centuries? Well, they would go after them because the core of this is human sacrifice, is that red liquid that they love so much. That's why witches have always been cast out, because when people realized what they were doing, they weren't allowed to do it anymore. So now in today's world, what do we see? We see people around us admitting to being witches, yet they say the things that we all say, oh, that's a conspiracy. They don't really do that, right? You see some of these crime shows where there's a giant pentagram on the floor and skulls and everything else. And they're like, yeah, there was a murder here, but I mean, they were just some weirdos who like Satan, but that has nothing to do with the core of what occurred here. They were just weird, you know? You just be like, wait a minute, isn't this a satanic ritual? Because they don't want you to understand magic being real and what these rituals actually are about, right? And when you hear things about quantum computing and that specific quote that said, the higher the magic, the more we need quantum computers. Well, the higher the magic, right? And in Aleister Crowley's book, he teaches about the purest form of magic being sacrifice, specifically of somebody who's very, very young and of blonde hair and blue eyes, right? And that's the highest, purest form of magic, right? And they're talking about how the higher the magic's going to go, that we're going to need quantum computing to describe the behavior. What they're saying is the higher the magic, they're going to need quantum computing to bring these things forth that they're already attempting to summon through the rituals that they're involved in. So it might sound crazy to a lot of people, especially if you're new to all of this stuff. But if you ever feel like something's off and you see these things and you start paying attention to it, it should start clicking to you. You're not dumb. You're not dumber. These people aren't smarter than you are. They've been given this knowledge to create this type of technology. This is fallen angels technology. They've been given the keys to this technology to bring it forth. They try to make you think that you're dumb and don't understand it so that you don't stop them from moving forward with it. It's as simple as that. Because if they were telling you at CERN, well, we're going to open up a black hole and we're going to try to bring over, Beelzebub and all his friends from the other side. Well, people at first would be like, well, that's crazy. But then if you start talking about money to them, start saying, you know how much money they're putting in there? Oh, then people might care a little bit more and say, oh, this is a total waste. If you don't believe in that spiritual stuff anyway, well, then it's a total waste. Okay. Well, people would start stopping. But they're telling you that, well, what we're doing here needs to happen, right? That's part of universal law. It's getting revealed to us what's happening. You just have to pay attention to it. You have to feel not intimidated by how they try to make you feel, which is they try to make you feel dumb, right? What they just do with the outbreak? They try to make everybody feel dumb who is researching for themselves, telling you, don't do your own research. Anyone out there that speaks against us, they're dumb. They don't know, right? And of course, people like me and you, the people who listen to my channel, we knew exactly what they were doing and laughed it off and dismissed it. But you know how many people got duped into getting that? Because they felt stupid, and then they felt like, well, these people are scientists. They know. I don't want to be sick and die. They're telling me I'm going to die. I better go and get it. And they do the same stuff at CERN. They tell you that this stuff is now just to do with, literally, they're saying, we've discovered magic, right? And they expect you to see that and be like, I don't know what that means. What, Disney magic? What does that mean? This magic moment? I mean, magic, Magic Mike? Is that what they've discovered? I don't know, right? And they just dismiss it and move on because they've been trained to think magic's not real. They're revealing it, what they're actually doing. And they reveal it and they show it to you through things like Stranger Things or that show Evil, where they're literally saying, hey, what they're trying to do here is they're trying to bring, they're doing these huge satanic rituals and they're literally trying to bring things over from the other side, what's behind them. And then people just go, that's too much for me to take in, right? And same with the quantum computing. Tell them about the quantum computing, and they're like, I don't understand computers, yet they're on a computer pretty much 24 hours of the day, right? Can't go anywhere without their phone. Their heads will explode if they leave the house for 2 seconds without it, right? Their whole life is dependent on the phone. Well, now they're talking about these quantum computers, and you're so into your phone, they expect you to just go, oh yeah, bring about the quantum computing. I don't care. I don't know what that is, right? Well, it's magic, right? And they tell you that with quantum computing, with the power that they're going to have from energy harvesting, what was Gordy Rose pretty much saying? He's saying this could wipe out the human race. And people are just like, yeah, well, they're just speaking in hypotheticals, right? No, these people are literally telling you, even Elon Musk, they're literally summoning the demon, as he said. And these things hate humans. They look at us like ants, and they're pretty much going to annihilate human beings. But since people don't believe in the spiritual element of this physical realm that we're in, they dismiss it. They're too distracted by their games and their phones and everything else. And I understand it is a lot to take in. It's a lot to take in because our whole lives have been a lie. We've been taught nothing but lies. All the history of the world is a lie. They've wasted years and years of valuable time in our lives, putting us in the institutions where we haven't learned things and never learned things that were of use, really. Nobody can say, throughout schooling and high school that they learned of anything of value. Now, if you went to a trade school in college, you probably learned something. But if you went to a university where you took communications or business, you learned nothing of use. Shut the grid off. And what does your business degree do for you? Nothing. What does your communications degree? Nothing. Did they teach you a trade? No. Would you know how to find water? No. And they did that by design. They dumbed us down to the point where we got to an age in our 20s where we all started looking around and we're like, wait a minute, now what? Right? And our brains have just absorbed so many lies and so much garbage, which makes it almost impossible to wake people up. And that's why it's such a struggle to pull people out of what they're in, because that's living in the matrix, living in a lie, a simulated reality, right? So here we are with back to the Vatican opening up the portals, right? You could see the creepy ritual that was done at the Vatican, which they do every year. You see the 5 points where the portals are open, making that seal of Satan, that sigil of Lucifer, right? And then we have St. Peter's Basilica, which was one of the ones that was open, that has even a tomb of Lucifer underneath the altar underground, which of course is the basilica itself has the crest, which features the 3 Bs, which is the 666 with the hexagon, while at the same time, those things are happening where they're talking about portals, right? 2 brothers find magic at the large Hadron Collider. And what are they trying to do there? They're literally trying to open up portals. And now they're even telling you that this magic has something to do with quantum computing, which all these big tech guys, when they talk in all these terms that most people don't understand, they seem to keep mentioning the word demons. These little demons, right? Musk mentions demons, Gordy Rose mentions demons, while they're talking about chips, while they're talking about things that you're not supposed to understand. Well, it's very easy to understand. They're just trying to make it so that you don't, so that they can continue moving forward with what they're planning on doing, which is the lifting of the veil. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families, as always.